Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm starting this podcast so I can talk about different issues within the API community. I think it's really important to give exposure to these issues so they can be discussed more. The topic of this podcast is visibility and representation of Filipino American and Filipino women in the media. When it comes to the Asian American community in general, it's hard to find faces like ours in movies, TV shows, and ads. For now, I'd just like to focus on Filipino women in the media. As a Filipino girl, I didn't really grow up seeing many brown Asian girls like me or my friends in the media. On Disney Channel, there was Vanessa Hudgens in the movie High School Musical. Vanessa Hudgens is half Filipino, and as a kid, that was really cool to me. I was like, wow, there's a pretty girl on my television screen, and she's Filipino like me. I needed that representation, that visibility. Having a Filipino girl to be a fan of and look up to as a young girl made me happy, but as I got older, I realized she was white passing because she's also half white. And not all Filipino girls have light skin and facial features like hers. I learned that being Filipino and brown is just as important when it comes to representation. Many Filipino girls grow up being told by their elders to stay out of the sun because they'd get too dark. They'd be told to use skin lightening soap because they're too dark. Fortunately, my mom never told me that I'm too dark or that I need to use skin lightening soap. She would encourage me to be out in the sun, of course with sunscreen. But I know all too well how damaging it is to be told that you're too dark because I've seen it happen to my friends and family. When I visited my Canadian family back in 2017, I was at dinner with my niece, brother, and auntie. My niece is a competitive swimmer and she swims a lot. My auntie suddenly spoke up and told my niece, "Ay nako, what's wrong with your skin? You're already so dark." I was shocked to hear this. Keep in mind, my niece is like 10. All she did was giggle out of embarrassment. I wonder how she felt when my auntie told her that. I definitely didn't find anything wrong with her skin color. My niece is a swimmer. She's out in the sun a lot. She was brown and she's pretty. This standard of beauty stems from decades of colonization in the Philippines by European nations and continues to damage the self-image of Filipino girls. Colorism is one of the reasons why it's important to have brown Filipino girls in the media representing brown Filipino girls. We need to put an end to Filipinos thinking that it isn't okay for their own people to be brown. We need to show brown Filipino girls that it's okay to be brown because brown is beautiful. According to an article by PBS titled Why On-Screen Representation Matters, representation in the media is important because it affects the way others see an individual and how an individual sees themselves. The media is so prominent in everyone's daily lives, it's important to show that an individual has a place in this world. An individual's experience, culture, and identity should be represented and made visible. The world is too colorful and diverse for there to be a standard of beauty and having certain people being favored over the other. Recently, I watched The Platform, a Spanish sci-fi horror film. After the film, I looked up the actors and was surprised to see that one of the actors, Miharu, is played by Alexandra Masangkay, a Filipino woman born in Spain. I was really delighted to know that a Filipino actress was in such a great film. I was like, wow, I rarely see brown Asian women in cinema, so I was really proud that someone like me was in a huge film. However, knowing that Miharu was played by a Filipino woman confused me a little bit. In the film, the characters referred to Miharu as a Korean woman, but Miharu is a Japanese name and Alexandra Masangkay is a Filipino woman. I love the representation, but a case like this makes me wonder, is this representation done right? I personally felt that maybe the makers of this film didn't do their research while creating an Asian character. Also, if the character was supposed to be Japanese or Korean, maybe cast a Japanese or Korean person, or perhaps the filmmakers should have made Miharu Filipino so that Alexandra Masangkay could properly portray her character. I think there's been a few instances, or many instances, in which a character in a movie or TV show is played by an actor that isn't the ethnicity that their character is. For example, back in 2017, Scarlett Johansson was cast to play the lead role in the Hollywood live-action remake of the Japanese anime movie Ghost in the Shell. Scarlett Johansson's casting in the movie received a lot of backlash And people were saying, why not cast a Japanese person instead of a white woman for this movie? And to this day, people meme on her as a representative of the Asian community. Moral of the story, please cast the right people for the right roles. I'd like to end this segment by emphasizing the importance of representation. Representation and visibility in the media is a reminder that our identities are valid and should be seen. We shouldn't settle for representation that isn't done properly or correctly. We should always push for the representation and visibility that all communities and identities deserve. For this next segment, I'm going to be interviewing my sophomore surge mentor, Omar Sanchez, on activism and campus activism. Omar has been involved with MECHA, which stands for Movimiento Estudiantil Chicanx de Estlan.
Hello, my name is Omar. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Okay, so the first question is, what organization have you done campus activism with?
I've been involved with Mecha, like at San Diego State.
And what's your role in that organization?
I've had a lot of roles. I started off as the community organizer, the liaison. And so that was kind of like acting as a back and forth between community organizations and our campus organization, and that was a little bit harder than I expected because it was just like connections were like lost. You know, people have been dying recently, like because around the 50-year mark of the Chicano movement, or we already hit the 50-year mark, and so a lot of people are dying, and those links are being lost. And so I feel like by the time I rolled in, this has already been happening, and so community has been losing its identity. Then I became the chairperson of Mecha, and that was the hardest role I've ever had, like ever. But it was great, and I guess chair, your duty is just to make sure that the organization is in harmony. You have to do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It led to for me to be the alumni liaison. I honestly didn't do what I wanted to do in this position. It's my current position. I feel like a lot of things I wanted to do were stopped, not from within the organization, just life
Mm-hmm.
happened. But I feel that I'm satisfied with what I've done.
Oh, that's good. All right, so name some of the issues you've done activism for.
I think that looking back at everything, like it's a little bit wild because it's just like all these issues. It's just like an overload, sensory overload. Like you start to get involved in all these things. Like, oh, this is messed up, and this is messed up, and this is messed up too. And I met a lot of people that they want to take on the world, all the world's issues, and you get overloaded. And I feel like that's how I came into everything because I remember when a lot of things that I've been involved in, it was we were fighting for SDSU to become a sanctuary campus, and what ended up happening out of that, there was like conversations for an documented resource center and Latinx resource center, and we have the Latinx one now. The documented one is still in the works, I hope. And then when I was chair, we were fighting to ensure that SDSU kept the Compact for Success.
I remember that.
And so that was a very like direct form of engagement because we mobbed the Senate floor twice to make sure that these motions passed to ensure that the Compact for Success stayed. And well, this year, I don't know. I feel like I was robbed
Oh.
because spring is normally when the political stuff happens,
Mm-hmm.
at least at SDSU. I don't think that should be the case, but I feel that it's part of the issue is that a lot of campus organizations aren't really politicized, and
Mm-hmm.
so Mecha normally frees up around the spring because we don't have our high school conference. So
Oh.
and that's when we can shift gears
Mm-hmm.
from the high school conference because imagine you're planning protest and I'm planning a conference. I'm not gonna be able to hang unless you have such a big membership
Mm-hmm.
that y'all just with it like that.
Yeah. I guess that leads me into the next question is What are the difficulties of doing campus activism? Is like what you said, the overload, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's a sensory overload when, well, it's just like I feel that just life. You're 18. I was 17, coming into SDSU, and it's just like I'm coming into 500 people lectures. Like all these things are happening, and you only have what 4 to 5 years to figure out the whole thing, and then you're out. You know, and so I feel like the big thing is just like information getting passed down. It's very hard for a group to really be effective without having a community aspect to it. You need something to ground this group, because if you have like this group of like people from, I don't know, LA, San Francisco, whatever the bay, just coming in, they're like, oh, we're gonna change the campus, but you don't have no backing from people in the community, then you're not gonna, or people to like help you get through like the motions. And a lot of people, that's one of the things that is really missing is that community aspect, like, because things are just so quick, it doesn't stop, ever. um,
Mm-hmm.
and you only have 4 to 5 years, I guess, is number one. Academics, they're gonna suffer like a lot, depending on how hard you're going at it. And I feel that a lot of times, for me, it was very difficult because burnout's like real, and it's just being able to process all of that. I feel that it's not that people don't want you to process it, but it's just like there's always something going on,
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, yo, they're doing this, or the CSU Senate's doing this, and I'm like, dog, it can get to the point where you kind of just like get like desensitized to just your emotions, and I feel that that's very, very dangerous, because what you begin to notice is that the people that are in these organizations are the ones that hold a lot of trauma, and these things start to peak, when people aren't at their best. It comes up because the people that are organizing want to change something. You normally want to change something because you're affected in
Mm-hmm.
one way, shape, or form. Normally it isn't this white person coming from suburbia that wants to change something. You might have a traumatic experience,
Mm-hmm.
like suffering from something in specific, and so it might be a something physical, might be something mental, but like, I feel like that also plays a big role, like the fact that the people that are already like hurt, have to take on all this uh all this work.
Mm-hmm. So the next question is like, who do you think should do campus activism? Is it like people who are affected by certain issues, or should like everyone be involved?
Like, you can have a whole debate
Mm-hmm.
around this, and the reason being is just like I've gotten to the point, like, in my life, where your intentions don't really matter,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just an intention. I noticed that a lot of people, they're like, you're going in with good intentions, but you fucked it up. I feel that everyone should be getting into like these roles, but they should know what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Definitely.
like, it's not just like, hey, I got my activist hat here, and now I got my entrepreneur hat over here, type of stuff. I think that at one point in time you're gonna have to to read. You're gonna have to sit down and have like dialogues, and not just talk about it, or because that's the way that a lot of these knowledges get lost, or words get misinterpreted. Like, oh yeah, intersectionality, the intersections of my identity. I'm like, that's not what that like framework was even for, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Like it was supposed to be for like the intersections of like oppression, that
Yeah.
within my identity, like institutional, like social things like that. And I'm sure I'm not explaining it like in its fullest form either. And that's like part of the problem. Is like a lot of these words we don't know what they mean when we like say them.
Mhm.
In these activist spaces, and so I guess what I'm trying to get at is just like it kind of depends on the culture of, of these spaces, and a lot of people get into it because it's cool, but I don't know if I'm articulating myself right. I don't know if I don't know if that makes sense
No, it
to
makes
you.
sense. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So the next question is, has your work in campus activism impacted your own personal growth and goals?
Yeah, like I feel that like I was saying earlier, I feel that my activism it led me to like a new perspective, but because when I was chair, yeah, I feel like I was doing it, but the thing is I crashed the next semester after I was chair. Not this semester but the last one. I crashed completely.
What do you mean?
Um, burnout. Um,
Oh.
I got burnt out. I wasn't happy with life. Like that type of stuff.
Mm.
Things were happening. And I didn't have a coping mechanism. And I got the worst grades I had ever gotten. I passed all my classes, but still, like, I was like, fuck. Like, I feel that a lot of this was stemming from the fact that I was taking um a, all white classes that semester as well. In my activism, I'm in brown spaces, black spaces, and all white classes. And so I was like, and I don't wanna I don't wanna be in more of these spaces, because I really felt depressed. I was really feeling depressed. And so that might be like some of the things that aren't really said, because it led to burnout. And I feel that when we're organizing, and I'm saying that like as that's like the negative effect that it had. I guess because I'm looking at it from most recent to, but I feel that it's taught me. Well, I wish I could go back to the beginning now because I feel like I'm being negative, but because it's taught me how to just be organized, like with my time, discipline and things like that. Some people don't like structure when they're organizing, like I do, because I feel that structure is very important to the way that we organize. I don't mean like a hierarchy, I mean a structure, like we're solid,
Mhm.
um, and things like that. I felt that I needed that, and so it gave me all those things. But the reason why I'm saying I got like why it affected me is because I felt like I kind of got a moral dilemma as well. Like I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do once I graduate. Like, am I gonna start making money or and things like that? And I feel that my organizing kind of like led me to a contradiction within myself. I'm fighting for all these things, but I might be just as messed up as the people I'm fighting if like if I choose to go down this career path. Um, I'm never gonna be a cop, but what if I become a real estate agent? What if I become, things like that? I really had to like sit down with myself, and so I think that my morals and my goals were like clashing, and that's why I decided I wanted to be a teacher, and this whole Rona just solidified my desire to be a
Mhm.
teacher, because I feel that now people are realizing that teachers, nurses, doctors are the backbone of a society, and this
Mhm.
society is suffering because our backbone's weak right now.
Mhm.
And they need to be compensated adequately. But yeah, I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But it's just like I was saying, I feel that a lot of our communities has like all this trauma as well, and so um, I guess what I was trying to get at is just like I felt that I was like so high up here, you know, I had overcame like all these obstacles, like when I was chair, and then I burnt out, and it's just like afterwards I felt like less. I was like, yo, how the fuck was I doing all this shit, and now I'm not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's hard for me to get out of bed, you know, and like
Mm.
last semester I was killing it, you know, and things like that. And it's just like I noticed that I had to be a teacher, but it's just like the things in my background that people don't notice is my support network is what made me so strong. You know, I had the machistas always like holding my back, and but I had a lot of great mentors. And the second semester that I was chair, it's a little bit hard to like speak on, but two of my mentors just like left. Um,
Mm.
you know, one of my mentors, Professor Ortiz, got cancer. Um, you know, and that was really hard to cope with. And then my other mentor, who I had known since middle school, from one week to the next, that's the way that I was perceiving it at the moment, just left
Oh.
back to his family in Puerto Rico. And it was really hard to process all of that. Like it's just like, yo, I'm doing all this, and then two of my like stones, you know, that I can like grab onto were like gone. I knew that I had to be a teacher because it's just like, yo, if I'm feeling, I wasn't doing all these things because I was so like badass, you know, like it was because I had such a good network that was like supporting me. And it was also kind of like a contradiction because, or like an inner reflection. Everyone always thinks like, oh, I did that shit, I'm badass, yeah, I did that. And then it's just like, yeah, but let me take away this person away from your life. Well, not like take them, but like how about let me just switch it up on you, and let me see if you're still that motherfucker that you thought you were. And it was
Oh my
just like,
god.
fuck, like, like I came to the realization that, throughout this whole process, that is, you know, that you need people
Mm-hmm.
like to support you. And when you're organizing, people feel like they don't need people, like, sadly.
Yeah, definitely. And the last question is, how important is activism and why?
I honestly, I don't really, even though I did the whole I don't really call myself an activist. Like I have a joke uh with one of my friends that were like, activists or actors, you know, that's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
They just go out and scream. Like, because it's real easy to just get mad about something and just, hey, I'm gonna go out and scream,
Mm-hmm.
make a picket sign, boom.
Yeah. I
You know,
feel, yeah.
and there's a difference. But what were you gonna say?
Oh, I feel like a lot of people have like different definitions of activism, right? You'd say?
Yeah, yeah, but you know, that's the way that I say it, because, like I said, you know, definitions get watered down,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, hey, I'm an activist, and now that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
So some people, I'm like, hey, I'm an activist for this, I'm an activist for that, and I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like you're very organized. And I feel that there's a very fundamental difference between an activist and an organizer, which is what I would consider myself.
Mm,
Other than
okay.
not, I don't consider, like I said, I don't even really go to protests, you know, like
Mm,
if we're keeping it real. Um, you know, because a protest, unless it has like a fundamental reason, you don't normally, you don't want to go to a protest, you know, that's your last resort, you know. And activists, that's their only resort, you know what I'm saying? Like, in my definition at least.
yeah, yeah.
uh because I feel like we need to differentiate, the we need to put a line uh on it. An organizer is someone who is organizing, and I feel like the way that I have been organizing in my life, like, because after all the stuff that was going on within my life, I think that within all that, the chaos of last semester, the one thing I realized is just like I felt disconnected. I feel like that's also something that was really hurting me. I felt really disconnected from my neighborhood. And so it's just like, you're doing all this down stuff on campus, but your neighborhood is gone, gentrified out,
Mhm.
type of stuff. I was really feeling like all of these things, trying to process them. It wasn't like easy, because it's just like, how are you gonna be organizing? You don't even know the guys on the block, things like that. You don't even I don't even know my neighbors, like that type of stuff. And I've been living here for like I've lived in Logan like most of my life, but I mean, in this apartment complex, I don't even know most of my neighbors, type of vibe. And
Mhm.
so I was really having like these internal arguments with myself. I was like, man, like, you need to get the fuck off campus. Like, it's taking up too much of your time
Yeah.
and things like that. But I'm like, but I was like, but if I leave, then I'm gonna stop mentoring like um the younger generation and things like that. And it was just like, eventually I kind of did decide to leave, and I was a lot less present on campus. And I feel like that was the best thing for my mental health and
Mhm.
everything, because we started organizing here in my apartment complex, and everyone always like would say, oh, like, thanks Omar for being the one that the first meeting, this and that. And I brought like a lot of these skills to my community that I
Mhm.
learned. And the homies from Unionel Barrio let us use their base for the first meeting. Then we moved to other locations, boom, San Diego Public Library, and things like that. And now we've been in basically organizing here in the apartment complex for about three months, 4 months,
Oh.
protesting a rent increase they've been trying to push on us. And I really appreciate the campus activism, but I feel like I had to move on,
Mhm.
for my sanity. And I feel a lot better the way that I'm doing it in the community. We've been protesting this, and it's because a lot of times, people just see us as docile immigrants,
Mhm.
like, because that's what this whole apartment complex is immigrant parents, Chicano kids, Chicana kids, um, and it was just like, nah, like, we're gonna make you work for it. The owner of Mac Projects hasn't really wanted to face us because we ran one of his representatives out of the building, basically. Like, but we're not docile immigrants. Uh, we're putting it down, and I'm hoping that, well, due to the whole coronavirus thing, tenant struggles are gonna be a lot more present in our lives, because 30% of the people didn't pay rent last month. I'm pretty sure it's about 50-60% this month. People are gonna start getting evicted soon. It's not gonna be a surprise. And the tenant struggles are gonna hopefully be on the forefront, and hopefully that we can find a way to combat gentrification, because like, I feel like all of those things were like things that were like going into my head, and I was like, I don't know how to cope. But like I said, sensory overload. You don't know how to cope with a lot of these things. But I feel that now that I'm more like in my neighborhood, I feel a lot more at peace with myself. And I think that these are the things that like organizers go through. It's these mental gymnastics, I guess, or not gymnastics, just like conversations. And everyone's like, why would you even put yourself through that? Like, um, I'm sure a lot of people, when you show them this, they might be like, damn, all of that sounds horrible, being an
Mhm.
organizer. But it's just like, it might, but I feel like it's even more horrible to let them do it to you, to screw with your community and just without a fight. I think that if you had to look at it that way, I would. All of these like hardships and things, I'm doing them because I know that it'll make my community better. Hopefully, like, you can change someone's life. and that's why I want to be a teacher. To be able to impact some kids. This ain't the '90s. It's not like we have all this street shit going on either. But I feel that complacency is real. Like it's just like at least in the '90s, people were like mad about something. Um, like 2000 after 9/11, everything changed. And I feel that people are starting to realize that that's all bullshit. Hopefully, my bad if it sounds too negative or whatever. I just wanted to be like honest, about everything.
Honestly, I was not expecting like those answers, like, but like it just shows your experience with activism. So that's all that matters.
What were you expecting?
Like, I don't know, like more like, oh yeah, activism is great and it changed my life for good and I'm doing like good for my community. Like stuff like that. Well, I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah,
'Cause like, I don't know. There's definitely a struggle to activism or organizing.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's not something that you can just pick up and leave it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's the hard part
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I didn't speak on some things, but it also gets in the way of family.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and I feel like these are the things that a lot of people in organizing were the black sheep of the family,
Mhm.
um, as well. Um, and so it's always like, oh yeah, y'all are the people that are supposedly the most broken, the most angry, and shit like that. And it's just like organizing kind of becomes your outlet.
Mhm.
Um, but that shit's not healthy either because
Yeah.
she's gonna explode eventually. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I was just saying it because I was like, this is the way I feel about it right now.
Well, that's good. That's your feelings, you shouldn't
Yeah,
sugarcoat it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
shit would be easier if more people were involved. But
Yeah. All right.
yeah,
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for this interview.
thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on my show.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
After this interview with Omar, I realized the difficulties of campus activism and activism in general. Of course, there are different forms of activism, such as art, social media, performance, dance, and film, according to my personal definition of activism, but to him, there is a difference between activism and organizing. And when he did work in organizing, there were a lot of drawbacks and negative effects when it came to his work. Through his interview, I realized that organizing, activism, and any type of work that involves fighting for a certain issue within your community isn't easy. Activism and organization needs the support from the community they're fighting for. These issues, as well as many social, environmental, and political issues, need community support. On the topic of activism and political organization, I want to take this time to mention Anakbayan San Diego, an organization I recently got involved with. Anakbayan San Diego is one of the many chapters of Anakbayan that is also located in other parts of the US and the Philippines. Anakbayan San Diego is a comprehensive national democratic youth and student grassroots organization that is dedicated to empowering youth in San Diego to create systemic change, both at home and abroad. If you're located in San Diego and you're interested in political organization within your community, check out Anakbayan Facebook page, Instagram, which I will link down below in the comments. Well, that's all I have for the first episode. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye!